Hi, Dave Hurwitz at ClassicsToday.com here to talk to you about Schubert's great C major symphony. This is Symphony number 9. Now, I know it probably was 7th in order of composition, and there are all kinds of unfinished symphonies and fragments and things in between that and the unfinished, and it's been renumbered, and on some discs you'll see it as Symphony number 9 with 7 in parenthesis or sometimes 8. I don't know. It's just a ridiculous mess. Historically, it was known as number 9. There is no reason not to call it number 9. I'm calling it number 9. So let's be clear about that to begin with. It's Schubert's Ninth, the great C major symphony. Now, this symphony was in some ways a blank slate because Schubert never heard it performed, and so interpreters have a certain amount of freedom in finding their own way through it, both interpretively and textually, because there are some awkwardnesses in the orchestration that you just have to clean up. The most important of those occurs at the end of the first movement, where the tune of the introduction, da, 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 is supposed to come blasting in on the way Schubert scores it is inaudible on the woodwind section. Everybody reinforces it. Maybe some period instrument people don't. I don't know. With horns, sometimes horns and trumpets. I don't care. As long as you can hear the tune, that's the only thing that matters. It's an absolutely magnificent piece of music. I mean, it really is astonishing. It's long. It lasts, 45, 50 minutes. And that brings up the other major issue, which is the question of repeats. Specifically, repeats in the Scherzo. Now, as is typical with classical works, Schubert indicated repeats in the expositions of the first movement and the finale. And you can take those. That's okay. It doesn't do any serious damage. But the Scherzo is a problem because the Scherzo is really, really long. And especially the trio section, which is this one glorious melody that you really only need to hear through once, straight through. It does not need to be repeated, and it shouldn't be repeated. Because what happens if you take all the repeats in the Scherzo is that it can be, potentially anyway, become the longest movement in the symphony. I mean, it definitely becomes longer than the finale. Sometimes it becomes longer than the Andante. It's a terrible, terrible mistake to take all the repeats in this Scherzo. One famous recording, James Levine's Deutsche Grammophon recording with Chicago, takes all the repeats. It's lethal. It's absolutely lethal. I just think that conductors who do this really have very little sense of proportion and balance when it comes to figuring out the structure of a large work like this. Nobody, least of all Schubert, could have intended that this movement in endless 3/4 time in waltz tempo basically should be the biggest and most important thing in a symphony. The biggest and most important things in the symphony are the movements in sonata form, that is principally the first movement with its big long introduction, and of course the second movement, the Andante, the march, with its two magnificent alternating themes, and the climax, that scary expressionistic climax, which I think possibly served as the model for the dissonant climax from Bruckner's Ninth Symphony. I mean, these are the expressive and formal high points of the symphony. A Scherzo in ABA form is not, and so it shouldn't become that, which is what happens if you take all the repeats. So, traditionally, most of them were left out, except maybe the first repeat in the A section, or maybe the repeats in the A section. That's okay. You can get away with that if the tempo is quick enough. When I was playing in community orchestras, let me give you a little tidbit. I was playing timpani in this piece, and we had an absolutely horrible conductor. We were auditioning conductors. He was this old Austrian geezer who thought that a wonderful programming concept would be a concert rendition of Mozart's complete Idomeneo. I mean, this is for little old ladies on Sunday afternoons, right? I mean, it was awful. And the piece he wanted to take us through in order to audition himself was Schubert's Ninth. And as you know, at the beginning of the scherzo, there's usually sort of a Luftpause thing that people do. Da 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 dun 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 da 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 dum bum. Well, he did da 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 dum bum, and then he would cackle gleefully every time it happened. He'd go So we were all sitting there playing along with this, watching him, essentially enjoy himself in an autoerotic way over the Luftpause and the scherzo of the Schubert Ninth. But there's a little detail I need to tell you about that's very funny. The finale. Now, the finale of this symphony is just a bear. It's something like 1,056 bars long and a fast one, which makes it very, very difficult if you're a timpanist to count, because the timpani are tuned, tonic and dominant, just C and G. And they can only play when the music is basically in those keys or coming up to those keys or doing something in relationship to those keys. And the development section has this endless passage where there are no timpani. And we were reading from, the old Breitkopf parts, and they don't give cues or anything. So I'm playing timpani. This is the first time I'd seen the timpani part, in performance. And I had my score with me, fortunately, but I put it down and I'm zipping along, and all of a sudden you just see a rest with the number 279 or something like that on top of it. In other words, I was supposed to count 279 bars of rest in a fast one before the entrance, which incidentally is off the beat at the beginning of the recapitulation. The timpani goes ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-dum. There was no way it was going to happen. Just no way. I mean, I didn't have the energy. I couldn't focus. The conductor was out of his mind. He was inserting fermatas and stops and pauses. It's not like he was conducting 279 bars in a fast one in the meantime so that I'd know where I was. So we get to the moment of recapitulation when I know vaguely that I'm supposed to be coming in. And of course, I missed my entrance. So he stops the orchestra and he points at me and he says, timpani, you missed your entrance. And I just looked at him and I said, no, you missed your cue. And he looked at me and I looked at him, and the rehearsal proceeded. But anyway, just to give you a sense, I mean, it's a very, very tough piece to do. Anyway, there are a million recordings of it. A lot of them are awful. Quite a few of them are very good. In complete sets, there are some extremely good ones. The Herbert Blomstedt performance, with the Staatskapelle Dresden, is absolutely lovely, and it's definitely worth considering. One of the great Schubert Ninth guys was Günter Wand, who recorded it 3 times. People tend to push his last recording with the Berlin Philharmonic, but his best, his absolute best, and they're all good, they're all very good, is the middle one with the NDR Symphony Orchestra, which fortunately is still available, I think. The Berlin Philharmonic, to me, is a bit too smooth. And the NDR one it's just simply better and better sounding than his first recording in Cologne, although that's very good too. And it comes in his really fine, complete set of Schubert symphonies. It's actually been a pretty lucky symphony considering how difficult it is to do and how many lousy ones have also shown up. There are also quite a few good ones. Talking about what I regard as really the great versions. First of all, there's a Karl Böhm recording, who also did it a few times, but his best one is a live recording that was recorded by the German radio engineers, also with the Staatskapelle Dresden. They seem to have a license to do that symphony. The sound is a little overloaded, but my God, that's an exciting performance. It's on Deutsche Grammophon, and it's in the Böhm late recordings box. And sometimes you can still find it separately. But it's Böhm with the Staatskapelle Dresden, and that is the Böhm recording to own. As far as other ones go, I have a few here to show you. First of all, the sleeper version is this thing. This is a Schubert cycle on Brilliant Classics, and you get symphonies 1 through 4 in positively yucky performances with the Hanover Band under Roy Goodman. This was early period instrument before they really learned how to play, and it's good. They're just not good. But 5, 6, the unfinished and the great are Schönberg with the Camerata Salzburg, the Mozarteum Camerata. And that is just wonderful. I mean, because it's Schönberg, who is a genius in this music. And some of those may still be available separately, by the way. They came out as a little set, of the 4 symphonies that he did. If you can find it with Schönberg, those are really worth having. Like everything he did, the music just breathes. It's organic and wonderful and warm. So that's definitely something to think about. But I have 3 performances here that I usually keep as my sort of go-to recommendations. One of them may surprise you, especially coming from me. It's Furtwängler. Furtwängler was a great Schubert Ninth conductor, among other things too. But his Deutsche Grammophon recording is fairly late. He has the Berlin Philharmonic playing marvelously, and it just goes to show, he could do it when he wanted to. For a guy who disdained tidy ensemble and felt that, clean attacks were unworthy of him, here's a performance in one of the trickiest of all symphonies in that respect, where he has them playing like demons, and it's all together and it's beautiful. And the slow movement, which is quite long, it's 17 minutes in this performance, although it never drags, is really, really special. I mean, it hits a depth of sort of cosmic angst and easeful serenity in the B sections that's really, really special. And he tears into the finale, really whips it up. So it's a great, great performance. Yes, it's in mono, but very listenable, very well recorded, and a delight, just a delight. But my 2 go-to performances, I call them the Apollonian and the Dionysian, because Dionysian, how do you do Dionysian? Whatever it is. One is poise and grace and discipline to the max, and the other is just let it all hang out and kick the thing's butt. That one is Charles Munch with the Boston Symphony. This is just a hot performance. Hot. The Scherzo is in a really fast 1. It's the best version of the Scherzo I've ever heard. It's chugga 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 jump. I mean, it's just, it's great. And they play the hell out of it. It's fabulous. It's exciting. It's just exciting. You just put it on, let it rip, and it will blow your mind. It's wonderful. But on the whole, my go-to performance in the Schubert Ninth is Zell in Cleveland on Sony. He did it twice. There's one on EMI as well, which is also, excellent given who we're dealing with. But this first one on Sony is really special. It's another one of those performances where every single bit of the symphony is in place. I mean, the performance is exceptional. I mean, the balances are amazing. The rhythms are clean. The tempos are fleet and just right everywhere. There isn't a thing you can say against it. So if you're looking for the one Schubert Ninth, in my view, Zell in Cleveland or Munch in Boston, or you get both. You may really indulge because they're so different and so wonderful, each in their own way between the 2 of them. And also really with Furtwängler for that slow movement, you get, I think, the most complete vision of what the Schubert Ninth can be. So those are my suggestions. I know you have yours, but one way or another, folks, keep on listening. And thank you so much.